my far right, we have the females, the ladies, and then to my extreme left, we have the gents. The mic buttons on our table are identified with the speaker voice. So if we're having conversations, you can just kindly press on them if you want to add to the discussions that will be happening. The hashtag for the event is hashtag AANOIP 2017, hashtag AANOIP 2017. Hashtag AANOIP 2017. Also, hashtag data privacy. Yes, it was. So just for people that weren't paying attention at that point in time. Okay. The Twitter handle for the event is @AANOIP. The Twitter handle for the African Academic Network @AAOIP. AANOIP. Sorry about that. Okay. So please, we can also connect to the conference center Wi-Fi. It's free access, so you could just click on it and then you'll be connected. Okay. So without taking too much time, I would like to apologize first of all. We're supposed to have a video by a member of the steering committee, Dr. Lucy Abraham, but that won't be available for now. But we'll have two members of the steering committee come forward to give us an overview of what the African Network on Internet Policy is all about. So I would like to kindly invite Dr. Alade Somi and Mr. Walubengo to the stage. Thank you. Can we put our hands together for them, please?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Jim, I think we need to establish the protocol, but then also I know likely these are very informal, very people, so please permit me. I want to thank everybody for being here this morning. In these next few minutes, I just want to talk about who are we and why we are doing what we are doing. Sometimes late last year, a conversation began which culminated in an event between May 2nd and 4th. And the whole conversation centers on the fact that African voices are not as loud as it should be in the international community, specifically with respect to internet issues, vis-a-vis internet policy and internet governance. So as a result of that event that we had in May, it gave birth to what is now African Academic Network on Internet Policy. It's important for me to state that that conversation that we began last year and culminated in the formation of the AANIP was started by Google and hosted by ISGPP. And what is the vision of the African Academic Network on Internet Policy? It is actually to create a critical mass of Pan-African academic think tank network on internet policy, leveraging on the rigor of localized research and its application to drive the growth of the African digital economy. And so in essence, the objective of the network, first, is to grow the African voices, that is academic voices, to inform the digital policy in the region. This is going to be achieved through an inspired and driven visionary and transformative intellectual research and discourse that is objective, independent, and politically neutral. So irrespective of the fact that we have gotten funding from agencies, I need to state clearly that those agencies in any way do not influence the workings and the results of the academic network. Another objective is to pave way for the favorable environment for online players and sustain a free and open internet. So we as a group continue to influence and inform public sector across Africa on existing and emerging digital policy issues to support the growth of a sustainable digital economy in Africa. So specifically in doing this, we will provide evidence-based, actionable insights to policymakers. And I need to stress this, that this is just not a talk show. So it's not just, oh, we are gathering for gathering's sake. No. We are gathering so that we can think together, talk together, but at the end of it all, there must be conclusions that are actionable and which the steering committee will see towards the actualization and implementations of whatsoever it is that we have agreed. So how do we do our work? First, we provide research leadership. So there will be publications. So we're looking at newsletters, there will be working papers, there will be opinions, there will be editorials. Of course, there's going to also be events and conferences like this. So this is the second in the series of the seminars that we're going to be having. There will be briefings also. And so in actualizing this, the network has a secretariat which for now domicile with ISGPP. That will be for a period. It's going to be rotational. So fully, we're going to take it to Kenya, we're going to take it to Ghana. So it's a rotational thing. But for now, in Nigeria, the secretariat will drive this for the next 2 to 3 years. And there's a project coordinator for this who has spoken with us this morning. That's Mr. Lanre Aduloju. We have a project manager, Mr. Caleb. I'm sure most of us have been conversing with Caleb. And in the interim, there's also a steering committee. Our chairman is not able to come. She is Professor Olufimilayo Arewa, who is the director, Center for African Business Law and Entrepreneurship, University of California. She was with us in May. Of course, we have myself, a research partner at the Cyber Security Research Laboratory at Obafemi Awolowo University. We have Dr. Godfred Frempong. Dr. Frempong is there seated. Is the Director of Science and Technology Research Institute in Ghana. Dr. Lucy Abrahams, for some of us, he has done work extensively with respect to IP. I can see Nina nodding ahead in agreement to that. So Dr. Lucy Abraham is also one of us. And of course, the ever itinerant John Walubengo here, who has also done great work. And as an advisory to the steering committee is Mrs. Titi Akisomi. Titi is already on her way. Titi leads the public policy group with Google. And I must give credit to her because she originally is the brain behind the whole of this initiative. And of course, we have, as part of the advisory also, our indefatigable executive chairman for the Ibadan School of Governance and Public Policy, Dr. Tunji Olaopa, who is also well seated there. So permit me to also use this opportunity to actually introduce him. So Dr. Olaopa, please can you stand up for recognition. I think basically that's all about the African Academic Network, but I will also call John to provide one or two other insights, just in case I've left something out. Yeah, please.
Thank you, Doctor, for that overview. For me, it's just to emphasize a few things, which is, for example, the fact that the African voices are not really visible on the global discourse as far as internet policy is concerned. We tend to sort of react rather than push our agenda. So in these forums, we hope to brainstorm and come up with what we think is good for Africa, rather than waiting to react from policies maybe from America, Europe, that they have made to suit their citizens, and then they force us to react. So I think it's about time that we put our heads together and, you know, take our stake on the internet. And I don't think it's difficult, because if I may use the Kenyan example, the so-called M-Pesa phenomena, you know, that is so African in its own context, in that in Kenya we looked at our context and came up with some solution to the problems that are very indigenous to our environment. And through that solution, we gave the world something that they could, you know, learn from or emulate. So if we could do the same on the internet space, I think that will be considered as something achievable as an outcome of this series of events that the African Academic Network aims to achieve. I think that's basically what I could add, and then open the floor for questions and answers. Thank you.
So, if there's no question, okay.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Minna. I wanted to know the network. Is it organizations or academic institutions? And what's the scope at the moment? What's the extent at the moment? And you didn't talk about activities. You didn't invite us to join. I don't know what's going on. I mean, I just want that part of the information. Thank you.
So it's an evolving network. This is our second event. It's also a growing network. There is going to be strong academic theoretical underpinnings to whatever we are going to do. So whatever we do is going to be evidence-based. So we want that strong academic background. However, the network will create a platform that will bring everyone together, whether CSOs, whether NGOs. Like I was telling Chooks yesterday, I said it's going to be a marriage of theory and practice. So our activities will be academically driven. However, in practice and in implementation, every hand will be on deck. So people who have done works in the industry, government, CSOs, and NGOs will all be involved. However, it's also important to just pinpoint the fact that it's going to be academically driven.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Emeka Osai. I'm just curious if we are going to be looking at something around internet policy and democratic involvement. In Africa as well, we understand how governments clamp down on the use of the internet when you want to talk about the rights of the citizens. So I was just curious if we were going to be looking at something around that space.
So internet shutdown was one of the things that came up in our this conference discussion yesterday. The academic network is structured in 5 thematic groups. So when we met in May 2 to 4, our focus was primarily on intellectual property. Now we are looking at security and privacy issue, and that's why we are talking about data security. We're going to also be looking at access and infrastructure. We are going to be looking at financing and entrepreneurship. And finally, we are going to be looking at knowledge and capacity building. So these are 5 main thematic groups for the academic network. Now you have mentioned the issue of internet shutdown. It's a critical issue. So that ordinarily will come under access. In any case, it's also part of the things we should be looking at, even in a way under data protection and privacy issues. So I expect in these next 2 days, we will have robust discussion, not just limited to data protection and security, but issues that you have mentioned with respect to data, internet shutdown, net neutrality, political neutrality, to issues of social media. These are emerging issues. So for instance, in Nigeria, for us, it's a concern. The issue of OTP, which was rife early in the year. So I hope that in these next 2 days, these are some of the issues that the conversation will throw up, even if they are not part of the major agenda, but these are also relevant issues that I think we can also deliberate on. How many people do we have this section?
Good morning.
Please go ahead, Ma.
Good morning.
Okay, good morning.
My name is Shakirat. I'm a cybersecurity researcher. I'm also curious to know if this data security event extends to cybersecurity/information security. That's my question. You want me to come again?
No, I heard you.
Okay.
Naturally, yes. I need to show so that we are clear about the thematic groups, but cybersecurity is a major item in one of the thematic group. So we have a big group that we call data security and protection. And so issues relating to cybersecurity is embedded within that thematic group. So please, it's part of what we do. In fact, in the May 2 to 4 program, I think cybersecurity featured prominently. We had a whole section on cybersecurity. I can see 1 or 2 other hands while we're trying to, not the initiative of the concept.
Okay, my name is Wole Olatuko. I'm an academic. I just want to know, curiously, is there an established framework for reaching out to governments in the different countries? Ghana is represented here, Nigeria, Kenya. Is there an established framework for reaching out to governments so that our gathering here this morning and tomorrow we generate the necessary impact that we actually want it to generate at the end of the day? Thank you.
So, government engagement is key and at the cross of whatever we are doing. So within the ISGPP itself, which is a broader vision of ISGPP, is to continually engage the government. So there is a structure within the ISGPP itself that does that. But then, particularly and specific to the African Academic Network, we have representatives. So for instance, I'm aware that there is somebody from Ghana, government of Ghana that is here. I know there is a representative of NITDA that is also here. And of course, NITDA is the centerpiece of information technology development in Nigeria. So there will be this continuous engagement with the government. The initial thought at the very onset was to first grow the academic network and then reach out to the government. But we found out that we may not be able to go far if from the very onset they are not engaged and included in the conversation. And I think that's why NITDA is here. Please, can I also ask Dr. Archibald to come to the front so that they can also provide some more insights with respect to Ghana, or you can speak from there. And John will also speak from Kenya perspective. Dr. Lucy Abraham is from South Africa, so the south of the Africa is also represented. And these are also people even at individual levels, in their own individual projects also. There is also constructive engagement with government. But then, Dr. Ashipong, do you have also something to say?
Yeah, thank you very much. I bring greetings from Accra, Ghana. I work with the Council for Scientific Industrial Research. That is an umbrella organization of all research institutions in the country, or most research institutions in the country. It is the largest research council, and I work with the Science and Technology Policy Research Institute, where we do policy work. So when it comes to engagement with government, most of our activities are government to government. Most of our activities are related to government, though we work with a number of institutions. So within our institute, we are taking on board what we are doing because I'm leading the policy research on ICTs. And there's already existing framework or structure whereby we engage with the government. Sometimes one-to-one or through our publications, through participation in the activities and workshops or policy briefs. So what we are doing now is that our network is quite new, it's about 6 months old. So when we take off, now we are now learning how to crawl. When we take off, whatever we do here within the network will be carried through our activities that we do in Ghana. So definitely the engagement is there, the structure is there, the link is already established. So far as we are concerned, it's not an issue because there's always that room for communication with the government and other policy institutions in Ghana. That's what I want to say.
John, do you want to add to that?
Yeah. Hello, can you hear me? In terms of engaging governments, basically we were thinking that one form of disseminating the research output beyond publications is to have a strategy that reaches out to the regulatory agencies or ICT ministry. So there's a component of planning which requires that whatever has been researched on, there's a portion, a budget going towards dissemination. So even if a particular country is not represented in this forum, whatever research output that will be coming out, there could be a component that allows, stakeholders to come around the table and discuss the research finding. That is one way in which we shall be reaching out to governments. Thank you.
Daniel Nangaka, for the record, representing South Africa. It's just interesting the way we understand all the trends of data privacy, protection, and so forth, and it's great that you bring an academic touch. But if you look at the legislation, this being your second forum, from the first forum, what has been the implementation plan or the outcome that we can be able to benchmark on to see the possible output that is going to yield from this? Because I'm very interested so much in the dialogue and the way we can be able to move forward. I'll give an example. Right now, we all know about the GDPR coming up. We are beginning to act about this thing, but what is the African position? Because very many of our governments, legislatures haven't yet come up with appropriate policies. Other countries have maybe bills that are in discussion. And if you look at the economic implication of these policies that come up, do we have to wait for academia to come in with appropriate research, or we have to drive implementation? Because all this fits into the policy development processes and keeping us abreast of technology. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, that's a tough one. But let me begin by saying The conversation we are having today is a direct result and an outcome of the very first conversation. When we had the May conversation, it was very clear and obvious that for us to move forward, we need to commence discussion with respect to data protection and privacy as a priority for us. And that's why we are doing what we are doing today. So, a direct outcome of the very first discussion, which is sort of a much more encompassing one, is what we are doing today. Now, with respect to critical stakeholder engagement, particularly with respect to legislation, which is key, I would have loved, for instance, in this forum, I don't know, GM, if we have people from the legislative arm of the government, because they are key and critical to whatever we are doing here, or else. Sorry? Okay, I'm just being told that we have representatives from the legislation, because honestly, they need to be part of this discussion more than any other person. If they don't, then it will be difficult for us to be able to translate whatever we say here to concrete implementable policy actions for the government. And either we like it or not, we need the government to provide the baseline for us to be able to carry along. So I agree absolutely with you that for this dialogue to be sustained, the legislature is a critical arm of the government that we need to engage. And I think as part of our policy briefs, we should also make it available unto them.
Good morning. I'm Lukman Abdul. I just want to ask, what is sort of a question and a comment. What particular initiative are you taking, or what moves are you making to bring together more of African scholars in data protection and security? I know that there's a growing body of African scholars in data protection and security. I had a chat with some of them about a couple of weeks ago, and I'm afraid to say many of them do not know about this network. Even myself, I came to know about this network just about a month or 2 months ago. So I don't know if you could just tell us what you are doing to bring together academics on data protection and security to this initiative. Thank you.
So, again, like I've said, it's an evolving network, and the network does not pretend to have answers to all problems, but the truth of the matter is, this is the network. And so this is what we will be doing the next 2 days is to raise some of these issues that you have just mentioned. So please post it to them, post it to the speakers, post it to the, and I'm being serious about this. I'm not passing the buck. The truth is all of us are involved in this conversation. Every one of us should be interested, and every one of us should bring solutions onto the table. It's a growing network. This is just the second outing. This outing, obviously, is much wider in scope than the very first outing. I think the very first outing, we just group of few people. Now we brought in the federal government. Now we are bringing in new people. And so the conversation continues like that. So for us, for as many of us that you have, maybe you also belong to other networks, we can begin to crisscross ideas on some of these networks, okay? So we can bring them in. The whole essence of this, and there's nothing personal about this, is to elevate African voices in international discourse with respect to internet policy and governance. How we are going to do it, who is going to do it, I will leave it to this body, this very distinguished body, to decide in the next 2 days. So it's going to be part of our key recommendations in this discussion of how do we move forward from here. Okay, Professor Ayolukotu.
Yeah, well, you already mentioned my name. I'm trying to understand or gauge the balance between your academic content and your advocacy content. I know that in some networks, you will hold a meeting like this or a dialogue around the output of some research so that you can have what you call research uptake, okay, in order to disseminate findings. It appears now you want us in this dialogue to set the agenda. I'm trying to gauge, I'm asking really, that is this dialogue an attempt for us to set an agenda, a public agenda, which will then drive academic research, and then this cross fertilization between the academy and advocacy. Do I get the hang of it? I'm trying to get the hang of it. Am I clear?
You are clear, Prof. You are clear. I just need to give other colleagues also opportunity to speak.
Can you hear me? Yeah, thanks for the question. I think he wants to understand whether the particular workshop we're having today here is setting the agenda for academic research, which later on will lead to dissemination, or are we here already with some output that we want the stakeholders to decide or to debate? I think it's a mix of both. We have lined up some academic output already that has been done that will be deliberated by us. And then we're going to have breakout sessions that will also enable us to expand the scope of what it is that we feel as Africans are critical issues for further research. So it's not cut and dry, it's not black and white that it's research output alone and it's agenda setting alone. It's going to be a mixture of both. Thank you.
Prof, are you clear about, is that clear? Okay, I think SF is raising up. Sir, okay.
Good morning. My name is Sunday Folanyo. I glanced through the agenda and I also note the moderator's comments earlier on that we need the legislator here present. But I also would want to introduce into the mix that some of the challenges confronting data protection. Let me use Nigeria, where I'm very familiar with. It's not necessarily things that you can cure by government or by law. Some of our challenges are behavioral and really requires the input of behavioral scientists to help us look at these issues and profile solutions. Let me cite 3 examples to illustrate my point. If you want to know the medical history of anybody, just go to the woman selling Boli, very close to the hospital. You have all the diagnosis without paying a penny for it. If you also want to know the criminal record of anybody, just go and buy granite around the High Court. You will be given the full dossier without you paying a penny. There are laws. There's a law that says people should not deface the currency or abuse the currency. But when we have Owambes, nobody can stop people from spraying. It's not that the laws are not there. They're there, but people do these things with impunity. So for us to really do something meaningful with data protection, we have to begin to get people to do the work that they need to do. I mean, I make a joke of it that if you want to know somebody's name and it's hard, just follow them into a bank and queue behind them. The banks will force you to write your name, phone number, and address, even to pay in money, in a public ledger visible to everybody. So I think behavioral
science needs to also be brought into the mix so that we can have a deeper solution to the challenges. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Achupon, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. I think I agree with you that legislation alone cannot solve the issue of cybersecurity, the data protection, what have you. Just yesterday, we were talking about how we give out information without realizing we are giving out so much about us. I agree with you totally that we need that behavioral change. At the same time, too, we cannot do without the legislators. They need to provide a framework within which we can operate. Without the legislation, I mean, whatever we do, I mean, will not come, though we might achieve some results, but not be very effective. So we need them to provide a framework. We also need them to understand how data protection, how cybersecurity, how the whole issue is now evolving. Because we need them. Other than that, we will sit here and talk. When it comes to having, because we don't have the whip, they have the whip. So we need to take them along. I remember we had a meeting in Accra on climate change. And there was a ranking member in the group, and he was going to represent Ghana in the climate change in one of these, I think in Oslo or so. The man knew next to nothing about climate change, but yet he was elected to represent Ghana. So while he sat beside me, he asked me, what is climate change? And I realized I wasn't an authority on climate change, so I told him what I understood about climate change. Then I realized that if I don't link him to an expert, it will be a disaster. So quickly, before we close, I had done the homework and brought somebody who could talk about climate change. So the man returned from the meeting and came to thank me for that link. So we need them along. We need to take them along. If we don't take them right from the beginning, it's like whilst we are up, they will be on. Whilst we are in the moon, they will be on the earth. It's very difficult to bring them up. Let us take them along as we are growing. We can learn from them. They can also learn from us. So I think it's a symbiotic relationship. We need them now, as we also need them. That's what I think. I agree with you that as a social scientist, the behavioral issues are very, very important. But for example, I mean, if you go to the bank, look at the way our PIN codes, we display them. You go to ATM machine and somebody is PP, we don't even mind. No, it's behavioral change. So we need to do more work, but I think we need the legislators also along. Thank you.
Just a quick addition. First, I want to agree with Pastor Reverend Sunday Folayan. Honestly, why we're having this conversation is to begin to evolve African solution to African problems within the international global community. And that's why we agree with me. When the issue of IXP came up in Nigeria, what did you do? You started your own local solution. You connected with Steneg, and that became the very first IXP in this country. I was just thinking of that early this morning, and then from there we moved, Lagos, Golden Gate meeting. So one of the things we hope to achieve in this meeting is to base from critical thinking. What are the peculiarities of us as a continent? And how do we evolve solutions that are relevant to resolving those peculiarities? So I agree, for instance, that we may need to expand this group to involve and accommodate those, for instance, who are not traditionally in the field ordinarily that we think they should be in. So ordinarily lawyers, IT techies, but also, like you said, the behaviorists. There's somebody in my lab, for instance, who is doing a PhD on bio-inspired intrusion detection model, taking a cue from spider, for instance, and looking at the way the spider catches prey, and using it as a model for cyber detection. So these are kind of wide thinking we should be looking at as a group. But then, the discussion here, this very first discussion, is not about data protection, I hope we all know. It's about the academic network itself. We've brought in great panelists who are going to be our discussants, researchers, We have people like Lola Shilon in the house, Chooks is in the house, Nina is in the house, Chris, Toko Gundikwe. So we brought all these great people, and that's what what we are doing as the network is to make that platform available. For now, there's not so much robust platform for this kind of engagement to happen. So what we are doing as a group is to just make that platform available, discuss, and the recommendations of such to also make sure that we get them to those who we need to get them to. So I think on this note, Chris, you want to say something? And I think we'll do those two, and then we allow. Do you want to talk now, or you want to round it up? Maybe we should allow Chris and this lady there, and then you can. Okay.
Maybe you can take my question later. It's more comment, but let them finish first.
Okay.
I will be ending.
Okay, can we have the lady here?
My name is Nufta Okafayat Olajumoke. My question is, how are you, is any measure being taken to incorporate students, young adults, into this network? Because I think the people that use this social media are the young people, but we don't really know what this thing is all about. We just go to Facebook and we post pictures and everything about our life when you graduate, when you matriculate, but we don't really know what these things are about. So is there any measure being taken into bringing these people to the network? Thank you.
So quick answer. So one of the reasons you are here is for that generational engagement. So so we don't want to leave anybody behind. So you see people from international relations, and so the not so old, but the old bridge, so Professor Yolukotun is there. So we have people of my age, and we have younger people like you, so that the discussion is broad spectrum, okay? But then, now that you have also mentioned that, the network, we particularly consider that and see how, even from this very early stage, researchers, young researchers, are also inclusive as part of the network. So please, that's well noted. So do we have Chris first or Dr. Laupa? Okay, sir. Into your speech. Okay, that would be great. So Chris, and I think we
I think these questions are going to make it more complicated for you guys. First question is, did the host actually invite the regulator? And what was the answer from them? That was one. You can take your time. Second, last week there was an AU and EU meeting in Abidjan. So what was the outcome of that? Because GDPR was also mentioned in that particular meeting, and most of the presidents and prime ministers from different countries from the EU were present, as well as the EU representatives. So what was the outcome of them for whoever was present here? And last but not least, we are sitting on the verge of 25th of May, right? Which is GDPR. Now, looking at that, you look at the United States and the EU, they have already an agreement, which is what they call the GDPR and US Privacy Shield, which is already in place. And well, we are getting there. I hope we're going to go out from here with some real facts. One note I would actually want to put on record, which is very important. Whilst we discuss, let's say, academic papers, when it comes to the private sector and to the government, not even half of them understand when you look at a research paper. Believe it or not, that's the way it is. We all know about that. It works great for academicians, but when you disseminate that information, it has to be something that they understand, and they have to take back and be able to understand how they're going to move forward. And I think that's one of the things which is part of it here. But I just wanted to have these stuff put on the table. I don't know what the host is going to say. Probably you guys are not interesting. And also I'd like to know what has transpired out of that AU-EU meeting.
So what Chris has done is a sort of agenda setting. So it's less of a question and more of agenda setting. First, with respect to communicating outcome to policymakers, I don't know, Inena, you've done things on this. Will you want to speak about that? Or will it be part of what you'll be doing? Communicating research output to policymakers, sort of. I know so this is something you've done.
I didn't want to speak at this time. I live in Abidjan, so I was around during the summit. But the summit was a summit of heads of state. And for those who know how summits work, there is an expert group work, and there is the ministerial one, and the heads of state just come to sign it off. So I don't think I can give a report back on that. First, because it is not in my purview. I'm not the head of any state apart from my own house. So I cannot report on that. And of course, you know that the security issues have priority. And with the latest incidents in Libya and agriculture, those were actually the main issues. So no, I cannot give a feedback from the Abidjan summit, I'm sorry. But in communicating research, I think that we have quite a number of panels that will be going into that. And we'll be here to talk more. This is just the beginning. Let's not go too far. We are here today and tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Just let me also add that we have the representative of our National Information Technology Development Agency is here, and I'm told that we're also expecting the representative of the NCC, Nigeria. Oh, it's also, good. So Nigeria Communication Commission. These are the two major regulators with respect to IT related developments in Nigeria. NIRA is also here. So you see the president of NIRA, the chairman board.
For another 18 months.
Great. So that's Nigeria Internet Registry Association. In any case, he wears many caps, so we can also use him in other capacities. So I think we have quite a number of stakeholders who are supposed to be here that are here. They're not exhaustive. And so as the network grows, we'll continue to bring these people in. Of course, I must say that we also have the media. We have the media here also. So I think on this note, bearing any other contribution from John and Dr. Achibong, I think we can begin to close this section so that we can go to the main issue. So basically, what do we do today in these next 2 days? We need to ask questions. So please, at the core of what we do at the African Academic Network on Internet Policy is all about questions. In Africa, we taught not to ask questions. So, but please, in these next 2 days, ask questions. And I want to say again, ask questions. So I wish us a very fruitful and robust deliberation. Thank you for listening.
We can do better. Can we put our hands together for them? Okay, without taking too much time, I'd like to invite the host, the Executive Vice Chairman of the Ibadan School of Government and Public Policy, Dr. Tunji Olaopa. Can we put our hands together for him?
It's really my distinct pleasure to welcome colleagues from all across the globe and to, on behalf of the chairman and the governing board of the ISGPP, express how delighted we are to be host to this important colloquium and seminar. I must necessarily express appreciation to
some colleagues who really have been behind all of this. Google stands out as through Mrs. Titi Akinsomi, has been the driver and the inspiration, and we are glad to have enlisted the Paradigm Initiative of Nigeria, appreciating the CEO Benga Sheson and ably represented by Tokwe Ogundipe here. I'd like to also appreciate the Web Foundation, represented by Nena Wakama, Dr. Lola Shiloh of the Center for Human Rights, University of Pretoria, has been incredibly supportive. Mr. Ebere Zoku, one of our, I'd like to appreciate our guests, the speakers, the moderators, the panelists. I also like to appreciate some of the strong partners of the ISGPP. You have just heard Professor Ayo Lukotun spoke, is actually the chair of the professor of the Aujale chair of governance in the Ogun State University, Agowe, and a very renowned columnist. And that is not strange. He has been pushing the frontiers of advocacy and how we can push a lot of the ideas that we have been generating, especially through a number of other seminars, events in our seminar series. I'd like to appreciate some members of the governing board of ISGPP. Mrs. Ife Chukuma is here from Performance Frontiers. Now, let me also welcome my colleagues from the NCC and NICDA. Now, just as the conversation was going on, I thought the clarification by Nena was quite useful. I think the starting point was the realization that the quality and depth of research-rooted contribution of African scholars to global conversation on internet progress has not been sufficiently profound. It does appear, that the voice and, the clear realization that if we do not do something about it, we might be entering into another level of recolonialization, through the internet. So the roundtable met in May to highlight the challenge and to say, how do we go forward? And of course, a platform was created, a platform for African researchers, which came to be known as the African Academic Network. Now, the academic network is supposed to have hub in the 6 sub-regions of Africa. And these were to be properly coordinated by lead experts in those domains. And one of the core responsibilities of those in those domains will be to identify existing networks, community of practice and of researchers in the relevant domain areas, engage them, because as it were, the import is not to repeat what other people have been doing, to see where there can be collaborations, can be, networking and partnership. So this second meeting is the first attempt to say, let's now begin to pick up the pieces of this big elephant, of these research gaps. So we said, okay, let's start with data privacy and security. And why the conversation is very critical as it was going was that, okay, if the conversation on data privacy and security get the required kind of traction, what do we want to do with it? How do you disseminate? How does it get to the right kind of stakeholders? And that is why that conversation is very essential. But the important thing is that you cannot disseminate what you do not have. You have to build those content, but this is the first attempt to do that. And it's important that that conversation is sufficiently deepened as we go along. In terms of how we connect to government, ISGPP is a model. What we do is we do monthly seminar series, for example, that address what we consider the topical, critical policy challenge that is facing not just Nigeria, that is facing the African space. And one of the things we do is that we struggle to make sure that those affected participate in the conversation. We just did for Nigeria University, for example, and we got the regulatory institution, the National University Commission, to be there. We brought UNESCO, and it was deliberate because we wanted the conversation to go beyond Nigeria and all. And what those seminar series do is that as soon as we finish, we develop policy briefs that were sent to critical actors. And more often than not, we have been invited to address a larger core of policymakers, to enlighten. And in some cases, it has led to us being asked to, there are some unanswered questions. Then we have conversation with some donor agencies like DFID, EU and all, and they have commissioned, as we speak, we are running about 20 studies on different research issues, just to solve problems and to answer some critical, issues. The second thing is that we cultivate some of those who are leading conversation. For example, beyond the Professor Yolukotun, Abimbola, Adelakwan, some other people be my friends. I cultivate them because these are people whose columns speak to policymakers. And consequently, we do everything to encourage them to be part of conversations that we think are useful and needed to be properly communicated. In some cases, and taking advantage of the model that we have in the Council for Foreign Relations in the United States, for example, there are some that you don't want to make noise about. Immediately you make noise about, the government is discredited. So when we think the policy conversation don't need to be, made noise on, we made it a close affair. We go to the government. We already commissioned the experts to do notes and say, this is what we observe. And there have been some critical areas like that, and it's been a lot beneficial to us. So this is the way to run, but this is not exhaustive. And we also want to benefit from your wisdom, from your smart and good practices, across the sub-region. Permit me, if I may, to say that the Ibadan School of Government and Public Policy is a growing independent think tank. And through our research activities, executive education, seminar series of this kind, monthly seminar series, policy dialogues, book reading events. One of those things I learned growing up in the policy space was this very growing statement that if you want to hide important information that is defining global trajectory from Africans, hide it in books because they don't read. So what we do is that we pick books that, for those of us that are reading, that we know are defining trends in global issues. We invite the author. Where we cannot get the author, we get the expert. And we assemble a critical mass, which is becoming very large now in the school. And regularly we interrogate those books. And through our collaborator columnists and all, a lot of, these are disseminated, news are made, and people started getting curious. And many have asked us to come and talk more about it. And it has led to us really extracting those critical, defining information. We also have, the hub of our think tank is the Public Policy Group, which is a multidisciplinary group with over 150 leading expert members in critical policy domain. As think tank, we are growingly becoming destination, World Bank and all, because of the quality of minds that are running some of our research and being commissioned to do high-end policy research. We are running a graduate program in collaboration. The intent of the graduate program is that some of the universities wants to bridge the practice and experiential gap. And we also realize, for example, we are running a PhD clinic for busy executives. We discovered that there are some practitioners who really have almost become professors, but really cannot sit down to do their research to end doctorate. And we have been able to encourage a number, dozens of them, under some arrangements supported by some research assistants and all. And some have been publishing, and it's been used. You see, the whole import is to, to really develop high-end strategic intelligence in government, to help people to deepen themselves through researches. The African Academic Network on Internet Policy, like has been said, is a Pan-African academic network which leverages the rigor of localized researches and the application. And its attempts to cover such thematic areas as state and individual, privacy and cybersecurity, copyright, fair use and IP protection, data-driven innovation in the developing economy, the policies of governing the internet political dynamics in the internet governance and democracy, socialization of internet as an innovation in democratizing society, internet policy and its development impact, the role of institutions in the governance of the internet economy, disruptive technology in existing sectors. As I close, and as been said, this seminar specifically addresses data privacy and security, as you well see, and the objective is to address research gaps, legislation, publishing, teaching, and policy development as it concerns data protection in Nigeria and in Africa in general. The importance of the internet, of course, and its growing daily impact is phenomenal. The African continent is touted as a fertile ground for netpreneurs, mobile institutions, increasing use of technology and leveraging internet to address development issues. However, require policies and laws in place to address concerns such as data protection, intellectual property and patent. Online privacy and online security in Africa are virtually non-existent, or at best, far between, and calls for spirited, informed action and stakeholder vigilance and voice. With the exponential increase in the use of personal information by businesses in the technology age, data protection has become such a defining, compelling agenda for priority attention in many countries worldwide. And it's high time that Africa aligns itself with this global movement by coming up with sufficiently strong and intelligent data protection policies to drive the growth of the African digital economy. Technological innovation will not just expand exponentially, it will continue to shape economies of nation states, while at once influencing cross-border relationships. This development is in no way going to wait for Africa to catch up with it. It is my sincere wish that the outcome of this colloquium seminar will provide a template for more systematic engagement by the African academic network. I also hope that it will also provide a solution framework and action plan for further research and policy conversation that stakeholders will readily take advantage of to drive the deepening and consolidation of a more accelerated drive to a digital economy in Africa. I'd like to welcome you once again and to wish everyone a most rewarding 2 days ahead. Thank you, and God bless you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Tunji Olaopa. We're moving into the first plenary session, and I would like us to put our hands together as I invite the moderator for this session, Nina Wakanma, to the podium.
They are moving spaces so my distinguished speakers can walk up the stage in a very distinguished manner. Good morning, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know protocol, so I will just use male and female since that is still legal in Nigeria. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just going to invite my distinguished panelists up on the panel. I have 2 ladies and 2 gentlemen. I think I should take the 2 ladies and the 2 gentlemen. Right. Achibia, you're welcome. And Teki. Chuka, you're welcome. And Reverend Sunday Folayon himself. No, we can't have 2 ladies one side. Come on, we need to split it. No, you have to be looking this way. No, 1 lady here, 1 lady there. Okay, can we have turn your lights down low? That's from my panelists. We need the lights turned down low from the side. Or just turn it around. C'est bon? Okay. Okay, there will be two more ladies. Myself and very other distinguished one. I think her name's been mentioned, and so I'm going to keep quiet on her name. She's just going to walk up the stage in a very distinguished, diplomatic. Can you please come with your handbag? I beg you. Welcome, Titi. Now, isn't that a beautiful panel? You guys are lucky. Right. I think we should move Sunday from that place. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again. My name is Nena. I'll be your first moderator for today. If I'm speaking very fast, please let me know. But there's not going to be any interpretation, so we can just wrap it up. This is a panel that sets the tone for the 2 days. And we have policy people, technicians, and legal folks on this panel. We are 1 full hour late, and I do not like apologies. So, folks, we are going to try to keep it to 50 minutes. We shall not be having any PowerPoint presentations because they take time, and the people here are very busy. We are going to do something very easy. We're going to take a minute or two to introduce ourselves, and then we introduce our interests, our organizational or personal interests, and we take 1 or 2 challenges and our desires, our expected outcomes for these 2 days. It is going to be relaxed, no stress, but we are going to be tweeting you, just so you know. So it's relaxed, no stress, but not too relaxed, a bit of a stress. Okay. If we are ready, I'm going to start with the gentleman by my side. A quick introduction of yourself.
Thank you very much, Nena. I was hoping you would start with the ladies, but yeah. Good morning, everyone. My name is Chukwu Kelu Ajuluchukwu. I'm a solicitor with Jelly Piper Africa, a member firm in Nigeria. I'm also head of brand protection and technology law firm, and I'm a vice curator with the World Economic Forum's Global Shapers in Lagos. Thank you.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Am I on? No, not yet. Hello, can you hear me? My name is Otrebia Ampofuanti. I'm an attorney based in Johannesburg with Weber Wenzel. And Weber Wenzel is a full-service law firm focusing mostly on the corporates that operate in South Africa and across Africa. My area of specialization encompasses data privacy issues, and yeah.
Okay, my name is Teki Akwete. I'm a lawyer by profession. I'm also a senior partner of a law firm in Ghana called Isia Akwete & Co. I'm a lawyer with specialization in information technology and telecommunication law. I have worked over the past 10 years in Ghana, focusing on the development of laws for the ICT sector. 5 of these years I spent on developing the Data Protection Act of Ghana, and the last 4 years I actually set up the commission and began implementation of our laws in Ghana.
My name is Reverend Sunday Folanyo. I'm an IP engineer. I wear a number of hats, but primary is that I'm Chief Executive Officer of General Data Engineering Services. I currently chair the board of AFRINIC, the IP Address Registry for Africa, and the Nigeria Internet Registration Association, NIRA. You will know that these two organizations have and maintain WHOIS data, which is quite key to data protection that we're talking about. I've also had a stint on the board of the Nigerian IT Development Agency, and right now as a priest, a lot of people confess to me, so I do have personal data.
There's no way I'm going to start that by introducing myself. What other reason do we need data privacy and protection in country? Good morning. My name is Titi Akisomi. I lead public policy and government relations with Google, with Nigeria as one of the countries I'm primarily responsible for. I've been working in and out of, well, more in actually, within the sector for the last 17 years of my life. It started because somebody insulted me, and I don't take insults gently. I firmly believe in the role of technology and the impact it has in our lives. And very early on, I recognized the fact that we needed to ensure that the policy and regulatory environment consistently continues to allow for innovation, but at the same time recognizing that people's rights, human rights, are critical to the continuing innovation that we see as well.
Right. Is this on? Okay, Titi, you keep the mic there. So I'm trying to think of a proper insult that will ginger you up today. But when I find it, I'm going to tell you. But first I want to say, thank you, Lord, I've not confessed to Sunday Folayo. Thank you, Lord. But actually, that was, I didn't expect that, and I think that's going to be my takeaway from today. Priests hold a lot of personal data. Yeah. And with the number of priests and pastors in Nigeria, this is certainly a data mine. I mean, yeah, I think that is my takeaway at this moment. Yeah, so Titi, you are with Google.
Yeah.
And what we want to find out is, why are you in this? What's Google's interest? What's your personal interest? Why do you think that data privacy and data protection is important? Because the title of our panel is Why Data Protection? So why data protection for you? Why data protection for Google?
So I'll do my best to respond because my response on why data matters is very much connected on a personal, on a professional level. As many of you know, Google is the poster child for disruption when it comes to technological innovations. So about 19 years ago now, these two young men decided that they would take what is readily available already. People search for knowledge, and they would make it readily available so that anyone anywhere in the world at any point in time can readily search and find that information. But quickly enough, it became quite clear that when you are able to harness so much information, you can be wrongly perceived as someone who carries power that can shift and make the. Now, in as much as that has a connotation of truth to it, more important is that Google recognized early enough through its many iterations of innovation, and I don't need to repeat them here. There are prime examples of how, in using new technology, it inadvertently actually collects data when we want it to, when we don't want it to, and we have to learn from that consistently. We recognized early enough that the ability to ensure that the ecosystem that we're operating in has the right sets of privacy and security laws in place that allows us as a data processor, data collector, to continue to innovate is critical. So why does this matter for us? A lot of what we have found over the years is, one, governments are more often than not adequately aware or prepared for the level of data that new technology firms are able to engage with, that we're having to deal with legacy data privacy approaches, where it is strictly controlled and restricted and is not in an unidentifiable way made available so that people can engage with it and continue to innovate. On the third level this is something I'm very passionate about, and it has to do with the insult that brought me to here, that a lot of people don't actually realize, meaning the end users don't realize that you are actually in control of your data. So every single time you sign up on that new app or the new phone, and you just choose not to read the terms and conditions, you are giving away that control. So for us is important, and this is for me on a professional, on a personal level, that you make end users aware of the power that they carry with their data, and that they're well informed to make the right choices, and that the regulatory environment also supports them to seek redress where it's needed as well.
Good. We won't go to the Reverend. When we finish singing, we can come confess to him. But let me pick up on terms and conditions. Reverend, correct me if I'm wrong. They say terms and conditions are like a man quarreling with his wife. Unless you click yes, I agree with the woman, you ain't going nowhere. Yeah, a man can like blow all the hot air, you know, like, hey, why are they putting all of this? But you have to come and click yes, I agree to proceed. That's by the way. But you are the one who draft these comments. You draft these terms and conditions, the legal folks. That's why I jumped the priest and came over to you. Why should we have data protection? Why is personal data protection important to you?
Thank you very much, Nena. When she spoke about terms and conditions, I felt this slight pain in my chest because I've been drafting TNCs for closer to a decade, and I'm pretty sure that nobody reads them. For e-commerce companies and a lot of technology companies out there. And what you just scroll to is the end where it says, I agree. You know, particularly if, like she said, you're signing up to a new app and you're just excited to use it. You say, well, you have to read the terms and conditions, which are in very tiny print, and they're saying a lot of things which you think it's okay, and then you get to the end, and you really don't know if they've just listed out the national anthem in the body of the terms and conditions. You really just want to agree. But yesterday evening, when we had some discussions with, we just sat down and we were talking, and we realized that the internet has gone beyond just being a simple means of communicating to an actual place. The importance has gone far beyond what anybody intended for it, and like Tishi said, Google is a huge driver for disrupting every single thing that has to do with the use of the internet. And our data has become like almost like the resource via which you operate on the netscape. And when you have very sensitive data like your addresses, your emails, your telephone numbers, and a lot more. These days, you're putting your PIN, your ATM pins, your financial exchange information online. Data protection, the importance of it has gone beyond just making sure that nobody steals your username and phishing. Recently, Uber reported a data breach that affected millions of people, and this tied in with a similar data breach on a third-party app called Lokito, which had stolen people's identities and sort of driven up black market surges on costing Uber money. And you start to realize that it is very critical that we're able to protect our data, which I'm pretty sure my colleague Chooks would talk about that later, but which stems into the need for data protection laws. And over the years, what we found is that Africa has been catching up in terms of enacting stringent data protection laws. I'm pretty sure there's a bill in the pipeline for Nigeria at this time. I know that Ghana has a Data Protection Act. I know quite a few companies, Cape Verde, Seychelles, South Africa. Some countries also have bills in place. Kenya, I believe, has a 2016 bill. So the reality of the need to protect privacy, the need to ensure the protection of our data is dawning, or has been dawning on the continent over the past decade. Nigeria has regulations within other enactments like the Constitution. The NCC also has regulations that also protect data, the NITDA. We have data protection regulations within some of our sub-acts, but we simply don't have a standalone act at this point. But the fact that these laws are being passed, these regulations are being enacted, shows the importance of protecting our data. It's gone beyond simply, what's the word now? It's gone beyond simply looking at data from the prima facie point of view, on the face of it, to looking at it as a crucial element if we're going to be taking on new frontiers in use of the internet and an open internet, further open internet policy that would affect the continent.
Right, Otribia, you are in Gauteng. You are in the gold area of South Africa, and you mine stuff. And for anyone who knows the history of South Africa, you know that personal data is at the basis of any new frontier that any country goes into. And so I'm taking from one legal person to another legal person, from the mining sections of Africa. What's your take on personal data at the moment?
It's always difficult to speak after lawyers have spoken.
And you're one of them. And the one after you is a lawyer. We are cooked people.
I think you've pretty much stolen everything I was going to say. So what he said. But to add to that, in terms of what is the importance behind the protection of data, so I guess working in the private sector, effectively as a legal advisor, the importance really for our client base now is that with data protection having become as crucial as it is from a legal point of view, it's become a major compliance issue. But aside from being a major compliance issue, I think for me the real push factor for data protection is the reputational issues that surround the failure to protect data. Because all over the world, people are really becoming very cognizant of all of the issues that have already been mentioned on the panel today. That, this is my information. You're turning me into a product that is going to be sold, and I have to have a right to have something to say about that. And when it turns out that an organization that had previously been trusted, like an Uber, has ended up in a situation where your data has gone out, it can have devastating consequences in terms of the longevity of your business. And we're no longer living in an environment where you can just sort of shrug your shoulders and say, well, it doesn't matter, I'll just make some apology and move on. If you are going to be the next Yahoo, then around data breaches, you really need to think carefully. Board members need to start thinking about this. In South Africa, for example, issues around data privacy, IT security are being brought into issues of governance as well in the corporate sector. So as a board member, there's going to be a risk for you if you just sort of shrug your shoulders and say, well, we don't know where that data came from. So for me, that is one of the important aspects of why we, at least as legal advisors, really need to be on top of these issues.
Thank you very much. By the way, there are 12 in a dozen. So if you say it doesn't matter, it does. But Teki, you've headed one of Africa's foremost data protection agencies. And at a point, you were the personification of data protection in Ghana. You took the good end and the bad end. And I know you're a compliance person. What's your take on this?
I have always been an ardent human rights person, and but one of the reasons I jumped into information technology and telecoms law was because I had too many techie friends around me who were always eager, looking at how technology was going to revolutionize how they deal with people, how they collect and handle information. And that had always been something that concerns me a lot, you know. And so the importance to me was not because you want to kill technology, but I had always looked at issues of data protection and privacy from the fact that the revolution that we are looking at when it comes to technology has to do with the people who are using it, the people that are trusting these technologies. And so it is very important to drive out systems that will build that integrity and trust. And that is where, not just data protection, so whether you're looking at laws criminalizing certain activities around the use of technologies and all of that, it was going to come to that. Because if we drive a society that brings us back into what I call the first state of man, which is the state of anarchy, then the very reason or the excitement that goes with all these technologies that we're using that will come to nothing. You're going to get to a point where people will not be willing to share as much information because they are not able to guarantee protection, you know, to the extent of their lives. And that is why, to me, personal data protection is important. And it's not just important from the legislative perspective, you already mentioned, but from the business perspective, which is why Google and the rest, and we worked a lot with them when we were in the commission, drive that, because the future is going to be dependent on whether I could trust you to share my information with. So if you are not, you know, putting in place measures or policies or processes that enable people trust you, believe you me, they're going to move to the next platform that gives them that. And I also think that is even what is going to bring competition, you know, into what servers you're going to use in the future and which ones you will elect to leave out, because one can guarantee better protection to your information than the other. So,
yes, Sunday, let's forget about the priest thing. In real life, you're one of the fathers of the Nigerian internet. You stand between the machines and the humans. You stand between IPv4 and IPv6. You stand between digital economy and analog economy. And no, I'm not kidding. I know this guy for real. I know he stands between God and man, but that is not the issue for the day. And he actually stands between doing safe business in Nigeria and blacklisting Nigeria. You have that experience. And now we're talking about moving from the anarchy to the sustainable digital economy in Nigeria. And what you're saying to us is very important at this time, because you also are the human face of Africa's biggest digital economy. What's in it for you as NIRA, as all of the organizations you represent, and as Sunday himself?
Thank you, Nena. First of all, I hope there's a video recording of this session.
Yes, sir, and it's streaming live.
Okay, I'd like to see this in 5-10 years' time.
Right.
And know that I made some statements. First of all, as I said, who is big, and there is now an attempt to enforce some regulation to make sure that private data is truly private. But you would agree with me that we also have some challenges in Africa that we need to deal with head-on. I feel pained that the solution to some problems is not really privacy in the real sense of it. And I would illustrate one for you, because NIRA is trying to start what we call a white list project. I am pained because it is a necessity. Because everywhere you try to do e-commerce or get on the net, once it is seen that you're coming with an IP address that is registered to a Nigerian entity, you automatically get blacklisted. So the challenge now is to let the world know that there are Nigerians doing legitimate business. And what is the whitelist project? We're trying to say, yes, this person registered this domain name. At the point of registration, this person supplied this telephone number. That telephone number we have confirmed from the telephone company that it is genuinely issued to that person. We know that the domain name was paid for using a particular payment instrument. We have confirmed that that payment instrument is genuine. It was indeed issued by a particular bank in Nigeria. We also confirmed an address was given, and we have verified that indeed that business does business at that address. So we can have 1 degree of confidence, 2 degrees of confidence, 3 degrees of confidence to n degrees of confidence as that person wishes. So this is data you are willingly providing so that a degree of confidence can be established so that those who want to do business with this entity outside the shores of the country can have some form of confidence that they are dealing with a human being. When you look at this ambitious plan, you will see it's about connecting data together, which directly assaults data privacy. But then, if we do not do something that drastic, we may not be able to give Nigerians the opportunity to play in the emerging economy. So I feel pained, as I said, that it's the complete antithesis of what we should be doing, but we have to do this at this point in time. There then comes the responsibility, ensuring that you hold the trust of people and you don't betray it. And I guess that's why they needed people like priests to spearhead such bold initiatives, knowing fully well that they are also in the business of protecting data. So I guess in a nutshell, come back to elaborate, but I believe this absolutely talks against what we're trying to achieve. But in the real sense of it, it also illustrates one point I say. If you're a black box, then people want to look at you in 3 dimensions. But if you present 1 dimension, perhaps it satisfies people. They don't want to see the other dimensions at that point in time. So a little bit of disclosure at times curtails the quest for people to know practically everything about you.
Now, that's a very interesting one. Titi was saying that the secret is knowing that my data belongs to me and I control it. So I want to agree with the priest and say, not in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, but in the name of the Web Foundation, Facebook and Google, amen. But the thing is, don't take me too seriously, people. The thing is, Google's economy has to balance this. How much can we give? How much can we keep? To what extent are we owners? To what extent are we being sold? Somewhere I was saying that even worse than our confessions to the priest is our Google search history. If Google makes my search history public, girl, I'm dead. I mean, it's worse than your naked body because it's actually your naked mind. It's your naked past, it's your naked present, and your naked future. That's what your Google search history is. But we have a lot to talk about. We're here for the whole day and tomorrow. But maybe you give us one challenge, taking off from Sunday's point. What's one challenge in data protection, as you said? So we already have one challenge down, which is the balance between how much you can give and how much you can keep. But from your point, what's one challenge you see?
So for me, that's a very critical challenge. One, helping, us to identify the various sectors of society, whether it's the public sector, the private sector, or civil society, to understand how that balance needs to be for us to continue to innovate. But the challenge I'd like to be able to put forward now, and which informed my tenacious pursuit of ensuring that we actually have this session, is the fact that merging professional and personal, if you don't tell your narrative, other people will tell your narrative for you. So the challenge I am hoping we can address is for us to better understand what the data landscape, the data privacy and security landscape in Africa is. Directly connected to that, because we're in Nigeria, is what it's sitting in Nigeria. And for us to be able to address it intentionally from an academic perspective that is relatively independent, that these are the opportunities it presents, these are the potential issues, and this is how potentially we can address it. If movements need to happen, then be able to push for that with a clear action plan as well as this gathering. On a more esoteric level is where we get to that point where we are not so afraid about the data that has been gathered, and your search history does not haunt you so much because you are in control as a user.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Well, Titi has hit lots of nails on the head, but I'm going to speak from more from a regulatory point of view, looking at the scape that I'm familiar with, which is Nigeria, and say that the major challenge is trying to enforce some of the bylaws and the regulations that we have. Recall that I said that at this time the proper Data Protection Act is still in the works, but we have regulations here and there. And one of the key regulations that I noted, it's something I've been looking at for a few years, but it came to mind yesterday, is the NCC's Consumer Code of Practice Regulation, which the regulators have done well in promulgating it, but enforcing this, particularly when there's getting the private sector to buy into it as well, to ensure that enforcement is complete, has been very, very difficult. You have buy regulations in the Constitution. You have the one from the Freedom of Information, the Freedom of Information Act. They're all there. Enforcement seems to be the very huge challenge at this time, and I mean, it presents some sort of advantage. You can look at it as some sort of silver lining at the end of a dark cloud, or some sort of priest on the other side of the confession room. You can look at it as a good thing, because at least the laws are there, and if the laws are there, then enforcement is basically the second step. And for me, it's a good problem, but it's still a challenge in itself, and it's one that we hope to skip by.
I think for me, I would speak about, in terms of challenges, the flip side of enforcement, which is compliance. I think one of the really challenging aspects about some of the legislation that's in place at the moment is how on earth do you make it practical? How do you operationalize these things? So you've got this legislation, it looks beautiful there are regulations and so forth. You are told that there's a regulator and that there will be fines, but when you read the document, you don't know what you're supposed to do. And if you were to do everything that they appear to be wanting you to do, your business will have to close down. So I think that one of the challenges is, how do we find that sweet spot of compliance in terms of let's make it practical, and then also let's make sure that people that are infringing are actually going to be
okay, yes. Because I was a regulator before,
yes.
I will speak as a regulator, as somebody who wore the wig of a regulator. I mean, we have to, one issue came up, and balance is data protection. Nobody is going to pass a data protection law today and you're going to have 100% compliance. And every regulator knows that. So whether you look all over the world, there's a gradual growth process. What regulators want to see is demonstration of compliance. You know, so you don't want to see that somebody waits for the regulator to crack a whip before, you know, you get up and you go onto their case. Of course, there are extreme situations of life and death where the consequences of violations of the law is very grave on individuals. And in that case, it is in our own interest for the regulators to stamp their authority. So the issue has to do with balance. Yes, even as of today, you know, with concepts, when you're looking like issues of consent, and you're looking at not obtaining a prior consent. And of course, for instance, in the Ghanaian laws, and as applies all over the world, there is a window where you don't need consent. However, sometimes some of these concepts are very difficult and challenging. So for instance, when we say legitimate interest of the data subject, where do you place that? And there's a lot of jurisprudence and text and development over time. And these things change with time. We don't expect it to stay the same, which is why we need a whole ecosystem of data protection. And when I was setting up the commission in Ghana, one of the biggest challenges I had was capacity building in this area. Because if anybody went to a lawyer and they said, I have to comply with the data protection laws, they were completely lost. Being a lawyer myself, I had a few times lawyers were calling me for opinion, and I was asking how much, you know, are you going to pay me for this? So there's a real challenge. And one of the ways by which, as a regulator, we try to bridge this gap was have, you know, adequate necessary training, you know, get all stakeholders involved to start talking about this. So getting people to understand, it's not going to happen overnight. And it's an everyday thing, because even within an organization, your board has to understand data protection in a different way. Your messenger has to understand data protection, but at his level, the cleaner has to understand data protection at their level. So there's a lot of, I like to say, work that must be done in order to bring the understanding to everyone's level. And unfortunately, that is not just the regulator's work in order to bring about this balance. It's everyone's, you know, obligation and duties, from even your own understanding of your rights to data protection and to questioning. You know, when I was with the Ghana Data Protection Commission, there were times that banks were running to us to comply because their customers were asking questions, you know. And we had a requirement under our law, which was quite different from other jurisdictions, which required straight up that all data controllers register with the commission. And as part of it, we made it mandatory. We broadcast to the Ghanaian populace that if you're dealing with any data protection, any data controller, in order to assure yourself, come to our website free of charge and then search whether this entity is registered. And that also helped, you know, to a large extent by bringing up that question, by raising awareness and forcing organizations to think more seriously about it.
Right. On consent, may I please verify that everyone here is okay with their images being associated with this meeting?
That's a bad way of obtaining.
Well, I want to confirm that you were validly informed that there is media around. I think we should have done this actually at the beginning. So now I have to apologize, but from the Web Foundation's point of view, we'll always inform people that there will be media in a meeting, and we'll always have a blank point where no cameras can touch. So it's not too late, it's not midday yet in Nigeria. If you do not want your image to be seen, to be known or to be heard, can you go to that point over there, sit there, so that we would not become... Where's the blind spot? The green seat. Okay, so please take the Nigeria colored seats so that we know that we wouldn't take any photos of you. But if you sit in this middle part, please know that we are live streaming and your images may appear. All right. Sunday, what's your biggest challenge in Nigeria at the moment?
I hinted it earlier on, but I'll say it again. The biggest challenge is the people you seek to protect are really, really the ones who don't understand why they need to be protected. The slave queens and the slave kings to become compliant. The rate at which people want to let you know what they're doing, they really don't understand how dangerous it is for themselves. I mean, I have people who are posting the image of their kids right from conception. It's crazy. And you would think that these are parents who should understand how to protect their children. And right from the onset, you give predators enough reason to map their strategies and formulate their watertight plans. It's amazing. And it's interesting that you try to explain to people how dangerous this is, and the first thing they tell you is, mind your business. Don't you have enough problems? So it's really, really, really difficult getting to let the average man in the streets understand the problems associated with this. Let me illustrate by a story. When we started ScanNet here in Ibadan some 20-something years ago, this man walked in. He's a professor in UI. I still saw him last week, ranting and raving about how his account was compromised. And we explained to him first that he had to pay the bill. You pay the bill because it was pay as you go. But we would help you find the culprit who compromised your account. And so we created an honeypot and set the trap. And when the trap eventually caught the culprit, it caught two big FT boys. Interestingly, one was his son, the other one was the friend to the son. So the friend was caught first. They were both in the same cafe, amazingly, using their father's ID from different machines. And the first one said, the son said it was pinned in the father's bedroom. Okay? And the friend said we discussed it at the bar about how cool the internet was. But the interesting thing is this man came back to come and say, leave my two children alone. I have now found out that the username can be private, but the password must be, the username can be public, but the password must be private. Now I am educated, let my children go. But for me, it was a watershed event because I suddenly realized that the hunter can become the hunted. Because now this man was preventing us from going to the police. We really wanted to make an example of this individual that we caught from an organizational perspective. I guess at the end of the day, I compromised and let the poor boy go. Today is a very distinguished IT practitioner. And every time we see each other and we say hi, I think I know what a lot of people don't know in those audiences where we talk.
This guy holds a lot of personal data.
So I think getting people to respect these opinions from ground up is a very major challenge. Just now I was discussing with Titi, just at the side here, that we have a Cybercrime Act. The Cybercrime Act has some element of data protection in it that could have gone into a different legislation. But even the people who did the legislation, when you're talking to them and you're telling them that this is not good enough, the first thing they tell you is, oh, this is very good. At least we have a basis where we're going to start. And it is very, very frustrating, knowing fully well that you know where we should be going, you have a faint idea of how we should get there, but the structured things you are trying to fly when we should be running. I think I should take a pause there.
Thank you very much. We had planned for 1 hour, and we had to bring it down to 50 minutes. As you know, Lanre, we should have been having tea break at this time. But I will come back to you for 1 minute wrap-up. But I've noted here the knowledge that needs to be created and the awareness. I've noted the capacity that needs to follow that at all levels, whether we are users, we are companies, or we are policymakers. I've noted the faith versus the works. In as much as we want to do, we are not capable of doing. I didn't take that from the Bible, I took it from the panel. I also noted about legislation and compliance. We have those laws written, but then what do we do with them concretely? We also have adoption versus enforcement, which is a challenge. I noted national versus international, because the safety here and anarchy elsewhere is about, it's equal zero. We need to balance that. And of course, personal versus professional, as we do into that. But overall is balance, how much to give, how much to keep, and we need to update this on a daily basis. And these are from the panelists to you. This is not a panel that will be taking questions. This is a panel that is meant to set the questions that will guide us today and tomorrow. So first I want to pause here and say thank you very much, and then give you the last word. We'll begin with my learned partners, and we end with my policy partners. We end with you. We will come through the lawyers to UTT, and the priest will bless us as we, and pray for our team. So go for it, people.
Thank you very much, Naya. Just to quickly round off, the priest has made some very important points, and he raised a very key issue, which is that trends, 1 minute, yes, trends drive the policy. So it's something that can't be overlooked. In as much as we're keenly focused on the regulatory aspects, compliance, enforcement issues here and there. Trends also drive these decisions from protecting the people's privacy from the inception of it. So that's one very key thing I just noted. Thank you.
I think for me, just a wrap-up point would be on my expectation over the next 2 days, which is really just that we would be able to grapple with these things in a concrete way and to be practical. I mean, I think it's all very well and good to say, you know, it's an academic network. I'm not an academic. And so at the end of the day, what we're looking for is practical solutions. And I actually believe that that's the role of academia, is to, yes, bring the thought processes, but help people who are not in academia to make it practical. Because if this network is not going to do that, then it's not going to be adding to the value of what actually needs to happen.
Okay, so I would like to end, of course, we are here because of privacy and data protection, because we know the importance of it, but I want to overemphasize how important this is for us, and for all of us here to see ourselves as possible champions to drive this agenda home. And I'm saying this because especially those of us in the IT industry, and coming back to what you mentioned, Sunday, about even the white list and all of that, with the GDPR being implemented in 2018, May next year. This is the European Global Data Protection Rules. It's very important that Africans, and especially those of us in the IT space, really look at these legislations and its impact on our businesses. Because of the strict compliance requirements under these rules, there's a very high possibility that a lot of African businesses interacting with European businesses may be just kicked out because you would not be able to demonstrate adequate compliance. You know, so it's very important, not just, and to demonstrate, you also have to demonstrate that the countries involved have adequate laws and enforcement strategies and strong regulators in place. So this is just to emphasize that this is a very important network, and we should continue this, but we must look at its impact also on us, because if we don't, a time is going to come where, you know, we will be chalked out, and then we'll suddenly start, which is what we do, scratching and running around and trying to, and nobody will listen to us at that point.
I already have a paper title that the network or someone should pick on of the GDPR, the European Global Data Protection Rules, on the Nigerian or the African startup. You'll be amazed in terms of the outsourcing that needs to happen. Absolutely brilliant panel. Thank you for picking every single one of the bullet points. But there's one thing I'd like us to be able to take away, and the fact that at the end of the day, privacy is a human right. It's a non-negotiable human right, and we should not forget that.
Right. Before the priest ends us, can you see which day I received this email?
Yesterday.
Okay. The mail says it's from a German company that I normally work with. It says, you'll be aware of the EU's new GDPR regulations, which are coming into force early in the new year. These will affect many businesses, and as this organization has recently restructured its business, I wanted to take this opportunity to write to you to assure you blah, 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 blah. Okay? In order to comply with the GDPR regulations, we would like to point out XYZ. I got this email yesterday. So businesses in the EU are already up and aligned. So while we are here checking out the dresses for our Christmas and December events, people are getting their businesses ready for the personal data thing. So let's get ready. Let's start thinking of it, because our businesses depend on it. Teki wants to say a last word and hand over
I just
to
wanted
Sunday.
to add that it's not, the reason why it's so important is because a fine under the GDPR, it's enough to bring any company down. So it's tied up, I think, up to about 10% of your global